I shouldn't have gone looking for it. I was bored, curious, and naive. My name's Jake, and this is the story of how I almost didn't make it out of something that I'm still not entirely sure was real. But it was. I've got proof. If you're listening, it means I survived long enough to tell you what happened. It all started one night just like any other. I was sitting in my apartment in the middle of nowhere, just me and my outdated laptop. I should have been working, finishing some projects for my freelance gig, but instead, I was scrolling mindlessly. That's when I saw it, a link. It wasn't just some random pop-up. It was something darker, more inviting. It looked like it was something I wasn't supposed to see. The words on the screen, "If you know, you know. Enter if you dare." Without thinking, I clicked. The moment I did, my computer screen flickered. A strange, slow loading process began, and a warning popped up. "You are about to enter an unsecured zone. Proceed with caution." I hesitated, but the adrenaline from the mystery took over. I didn't have to do anything special. There were no complicated steps, no special software. I just had to click through. That's when I realized how easy it was to access. Too easy. Then it all changed. The screen switched to a black background, and a single message appeared in bold red letters. "Welcome to the dark web." I froze for a moment, not knowing what to expect. I had heard whispers about it, rumors that circulated about the deep web, about places where you could buy anything, even people, but I figured it was just online legends. Until now. Suddenly, the page refreshed, and I found myself on a forum. The posts were disturbing, to say the least, graphic images, strange videos, and conversations I shouldn't have been a part of. I scrolled down, unsure of why I was even there. I thought about logging off, but something kept pulling me in. It felt like a dark curiosity I couldn't shake off. Then, I saw a new post. The title was simple: "Looking for new members." No explanation, no context, just that. I clicked, and what I saw next, what I found myself reading, tore away any illusion I had of just browsing some dark, niche corners of the internet. This wasn't a game. It wasn't something I could just back out of. The message was directed at me, and before I knew it, I had already typed my first response. I shouldn't have typed anything. It was a rash decision, but at the time I couldn't stop myself. It felt like a game, like something I could pull myself out of at any moment. But when I hit enter, the screen shifted, and that's when I knew I was in deeper than I ever imagined. A new message appeared immediately, almost too fast, like someone had been waiting for me to type that very thing. The message read, "You're a brave one, but bravery comes at a cost." I froze. Something inside me told me to close the laptop and never look back. But instead, I sat there, staring at those words, my heart pounding. This was no longer curiosity. This was something else, something darker. I leaned in closer to the screen. The cursor blinked, waiting for me to respond. A new line of text appeared beneath the message. "The initiation begins now." Before I could react, the page refreshed again. And that's when the images began. Horrifying, grotesque images flashed on my screen. Some looked like they were from old, grainy horror films, while others were disturbingly real. People, faces frozen in terror, bound and gagged, their eyes wide with fear. Videos played automatically, and I couldn't turn them off. The screen then went black for a moment before an unsettling message popped up. "We want to see how far you're willing to go." I didn't understand what that meant at first. But the next thing I knew, a camera feed opened up on my laptop, showing the inside of my own apartment. I stared at it in disbelief. How was that possible? My heart stopped. There was no one in the room, but there it was, clear as day. The exact same angle of the space I was sitting in. I glanced over my shoulder. No one. Yet the camera feed continued, a live stream of my apartment. I jumped to close the laptop, but before I could, the screen flickered again. The message changed. "You've been marked, Jake. Don't worry. We'll be seeing more of you." I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. This wasn't a game. This wasn't curiosity anymore. Someone or something was watching me, and I was no longer in control. I tried to power off the laptop, but the screen stayed on, forcing me to watch as new images began to load. images I couldn't unsee. I should have known it wasn't just a prank. The way my screen kept flickering, the way it seemed to have a mind of its own, it was all too real. It wasn't just some sick online forum where bored people posted disturbing content for kicks. No, this was something much darker. Something with eyes on me. I realized too late that I wasn't just browsing the dark web anymore. I was in it. I tried everything to close the browser. I clicked frantically on the X in the corner. I powered off my laptop. I even tried to pull the plug. Nothing worked. The screen was frozen, locked in place like it was mocking me. And then, just as I was about to lose my mind, a new message appeared. "We told you we'd be seeing more of you." The text was followed by a live feed, and this time I could see myself. Not through my webcam, but from a perspective I couldn't explain. It was as though someone or something was sitting in my apartment with me, filming me in real time. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, trying to call someone, anyone, but it wouldn't connect. It was like the network had been severed. My heart raced, the room felt cold, and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread creep over me. I tried to look around the room again. No one was there. But that feeling, the one that told you someone was watching you, was all-encompassing. It was suffocating. As I sat there, frozen, another notification popped up. A countdown. I didn't know how I hadn't noticed it before. It was ticking down from 10 minutes. "You have 10 minutes to complete your task, Jake." I felt sick to my stomach. I clicked on the notification in a panic. The task itself wasn't clear at first, but as the seconds ticked by, the text began to appear, one word at a time. "Find the key." Took me a moment to understand what it meant. The key. What key? There were no instructions, just the words "find the key." Then the screen shifted again, revealing a map of my apartment. Every corner, every room, highlighted in red. "Find the key, Jake, or else." The countdown clock was still ticking. My mind raced. What was this? Was this some twisted game? Or was something far worse at stake? I stood up, my legs shaky, and began to search the apartment frantically. I had no idea what I was looking for. The walls seemed to close in as I scoured every inch of the room, looking for any clue. My eyes darted from one spot to another, but nothing made sense. Then I heard it, a soft tapping sound, like footsteps, coming from the hallway. I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart pounded in my chest. There was no one else in the apartment with me, but the tapping grew louder, closer, and that's when I saw it. A shadow moving in the hallway, just beyond the door. I rushed to the door and flung it open, but no one was there. I could barely breathe. I went back to my laptop, feeling the weight of the task pressing down on me. "Time's almost up, Jake." The countdown had reached 2 minutes. The tapping sound returned, louder this time, but it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the room with me. I spun around, eyes scanning every inch of the space. I couldn't breathe. The key wasn't just an object. It was a test. I had to find it, fast. The tapping was getting louder, almost rhythmic. I was paralyzed with fear, every muscle in my body telling me to run, to escape this nightmare. But where would I go? The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating me with the oppressive atmosphere. I couldn't think clearly. I just needed to find the key. I had to. The map on my laptop had updated, flashing with an eerie red glow. A specific spot was now marked, underneath the floorboards near my bed. I felt a chill sweep over me. Couldn't be. The room around me seemed to warp, like the very air was thick with dread. I crawled to the corner of my room, lifting the bed with shaking hands. Beneath it was an old, dusty rug. I yanked it away, revealing a trapdoor in the floor. My mind screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to forget this madness, but I couldn't. Something was pulling me in, forcing my hand to do this. The floorboards creaked as I pried them open with the edge of a nearby chair. My heart hammered in my chest. I was shaking, drenched in sweat, but I couldn't stop. The countdown timer was ticking relentlessly. Only 30 seconds left. Then I saw it. A small metallic box buried deep beneath the floor. It was ancient, rusted, and looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The box had no lock, no keyhole, just a simple latch. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the box. What was inside? Was this the key? Was this a trap? The tapping noise was deafening now. It wasn't just in the room. It felt like it was coming from all directions, like someone was moving around me, circling me. I opened the box. Inside, I found a small, blood-stained knife. Its blade was black, worn with time, but still sharp enough to slice through flesh in an instant. The sight of it made my stomach turn, my mind spiraling with the horror of what I was being dragged into. I barely had time to process what I was holding before a message appeared on the laptop. "Congratulations. You've passed the first test." I blinked at the screen in confusion, trying to make sense of it. First test? What was going on? I had the knife now. Was I supposed to use it? Was I supposed to? Before I could finish the thought, the laptop screen flashed to black. And then a new message appeared, but this time it was different. It wasn't directed at me. "Jake isn't going anywhere." I didn't know what to make of it. Panic surged through me, and my fingers trembled on the edge of the knife. I turned to check the room again, desperate to see where the sound was coming from. But before I could react, the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. The camera feed on my laptop switched again. This time, it wasn't showing the inside of my apartment. It was showing me, standing frozen with the knife in my hand. I wasn't alone anymore. A voice crackled through the speakers. It was distorted, menacing, almost robotic in its tone. "You've earned your place. But now the real game begins." The door to my apartment creaked open, but I couldn't move. Something was in there with me, something close. The final seconds on the countdown ticked away. Time was up. The door creaked open, and my breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it wasn't good. The sound of footsteps, soft and measured, echoed from the hallway, growing closer. Whoever or whatever was out there, I could feel it getting nearer. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I tightened my grip on the knife, the cold metal biting into my palm. The room was deathly silent now, save for the rhythmic beating of my own heart. I could barely breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. I was trapped. The screen had told me that much. I had no choice but to face whatever was coming. The footsteps stopped just outside my door. I held my breath, every nerve in my body screaming for me to do something, anything. But my legs felt like lead. The room felt suffocating. I wanted to scream for help, but I knew it would be useless. There was no one out there, not anymore. Then, the door swung open with a jarring force, hitting the wall with a loud bang. I didn't even have time to react before a figure stepped inside. It wasn't human. Not entirely. The thing that stood before me was tall, unnaturally tall, with pale, lifeless skin stretched tightly over its frame. Its face was a blur, but I could see its eyes wide, empty, black. There was no soul behind them, no humanity. It was nothing more than a puppet, controlled by something far darker. The creature, if it could be called that, stared at me for a moment. Then, it tilted its head, as if considering me, before slowly moving toward me. The room felt colder with each step it took. I backed away, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do? I still had the knife, but it seemed so insignificant against whatever this thing was. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the creature paused. It didn't attack. Instead, it pointed at the laptop on the table. The screen flickered to life again, and a new message appeared. "The game is far from over, Jake. You've only just begun." Before I could make sense of the words, the creature turned and walked toward the window, its movements unnaturally smooth and deliberate. I watched in a daze as it opened the window, peering out into the night. It didn't speak, but the message was clear. I was being watched. Every move, every second of this twisted game had been calculated from the start. The creature turned back toward me, as if it had come to some silent conclusion. "Do you want to survive?" it asked, its voice low and hollow, like the sound of wind through dead leaves. I didn't answer. There was no point. I was too terrified to even speak. It leaned closer, and I could smell the rot of its breath. The stench was overwhelming. I felt my stomach churn, but I didn't dare move. Then you must play. No one leaves without playing the game, it whispered. I was trapped. There was no escaping this nightmare. The thing stepped back, and as it did, the lights in the room flickered and went out completely. Total darkness. I could hear the faint sound of the creature moving, but I couldn't see it anymore. My heart raced, and I gripped the knife harder, feeling the cold steel cut into my skin. I felt a rush of adrenaline, but I was paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move, couldn't think clearly. I had to survive, but I had no idea how. Then, I heard it. A whisper, coming from behind me. It was a voice, but not the creature's. It was soft, pleading, desperate. Help me, Jake. Please. I turned, my heart skipping a beat. But there was nothing there. Just the emptiness of my dark apartment. The silence pressing in on me. You're not alone in this. The voice was louder now, more desperate. I felt a cold hand wrap around my wrist. The grip on my wrist tightened. It was cold, clammy, not human. I tried to pull away, but the hand wouldn't let go. My pulse raced as I fumbled in the dark, the knife trembling in my hand. My mind was a blur. I needed to escape. I needed to wake up. But the terror was real, and I could feel it closing in. Help me, Jake. Please. The voice came again, this time clearer, more insistent. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a cry, full of desperation, coming from somewhere in the shadows. I was no longer alone. The room felt like it was filled with a presence, something unseen, watching me. I turned around, expecting to see the creature, but it was gone. There was no movement, no sound except for the breathing that filled the room. It was heavy, suffocating, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I couldn't think straight. My thoughts were racing, each one more irrational than the last. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, trying to make sense of what was happening. But nothing made sense. The room felt like it was shifting, stretching, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Then the screen on the laptop flickered back on. The words on the screen were haunting. The final test begins now. I didn't want to look, but I did. The message was followed by a new image. It was a photo of me, but not the one from earlier. This one was different. I was lying on the floor, eyes wide open, motionless. The blood drained from my face as I stared at the image, realizing with a sickening certainty that the body wasn't just an image. It was me. The countdown timer appeared once more. This time it was set to 1 minute. 1 minute until it was too late. 1 minute until I would become a part of whatever this nightmare was. Forever. There was no choice left. I had to make it out. I had to escape. I looked around, desperate for an exit, but the walls, the floor, the very air around me seemed to hold me captive. I tried to move toward the window, but I couldn't. Someone was blocking me. The shadow that had been lurking in the corners of my mind materialized once more. It was there, looming, its eyes staring at me, void of any trace of humanity. "Do you want to survive?" It whispered again, its voice sending a chill down my spine. I was frozen, the knife in my hand now feeling more like a burden than a weapon. I didn't have time for this. I didn't have time for any of it. But as I stood there, paralyzed by fear, a thought crossed my mind. What if this was it? What if I had already made my final choice the moment I clicked that link? The screen flashed again, this time showing a simple question. What will you sacrifice? I knew what it meant. This wasn't about the knife. It wasn't about finding the key or surviving the game. It was about choosing to give something up to escape. But what? My life? My soul? My humanity? I felt the cold hand on my wrist again, dragging me down. The clock was ticking. The countdown had reached 30 seconds. I had to make a decision. The presence around me grew stronger. It was almost as if it was feeding off my fear, drawing closer with every passing second. I could hear the breathing again, the whispers. The walls seemed to be closing in. I took a deep breath. My mind was racing, but I knew one thing for sure. If I didn't act now, I wouldn't have a chance to act at all. I dropped the knife, let it fall to the floor, and stepped forward. The moment I did, the room went completely silent. The pressure, the suffocating fear, it all vanished. The walls stopped closing in, the dark figures disappeared. The laptop screen flickered once more, showing a new message. "Congratulations, Jake, you've made it out." I blinked, confused, my mind still in shock. The room was silent now. The lights were on. My apartment was normal. The laptop was off. There was no sign of the creature, no more whispers. It was as if everything had never happened. But as I turned around to take it all in, my eyes caught something on the wall. A new message, scrawled in dark, smeared ink. It read, "We're always watching." And that's when I realized the nightmare was far from over. I had survived this round, but I knew there were others. And sooner or later, I'd be back on the game board. Because once you're in, you're never truly out.